The notification came in at 2:47 inches the morning, and I almost didn't see it. I was still half asleep, still wearing the same oversized hospital sweater I'd had on for 3 days straight, still smelling faintly of antiseptic and vending machine coffee. My phone lit up on the nightstand next to my mother's hospital bed, and I reached for it out of habit the way you do when you've been someone's emergency contact for 6 months and every buzz could mean something has gone wrong. It was an alert from my brokerage account. I stared at it for a long moment, then I sat up. The balance displayed on the screen was $214. I have a very specific memory of what happened next. I remember the sound of the oxygen monitor beeping softly beside my mother. I remember the yellow light coming through the half-open door from the hallway. I remember reading the number 3 times, then 4, then putting the phone face down on the mattress and staring at the ceiling like if I waited long enough the room would rearrange itself into something that made sense. My brokerage account had held $618,400 when I left for Portland 6 months ago. I picked the phone back up. I opened the transaction history, and I sat there in the dark reading through withdrawals the way you read a letter you already know is going to destroy you slowly, because some part of you is still hoping the words will change. 11 transfers, spread across 4 months, each one just under the reporting threshold, routed to an account I didn't recognize, under a name I did. My sister's name. I want to tell you, I cried. I didn't. I just got very, very still. My mother stirred in the bed beside me, murmured something in her sleep, and I reached over and pulled her blanket up around her shoulders, and I thought, I have been here for 6 months. I slept on a pull-out chair. I learned how to read an EKG. I argued with insurance adjusters and translated medical jargon, and held her hand through 2 surgeries. And while I was doing all of that, my sister was draining the account I spent 8 years building. I work in corporate finance. I've spent the last 4 years doing forensic auditing for a mid-sized firm that handles fraud cases. I know exactly what a structured withdrawal pattern looks like. I know exactly what it means when someone moves money in amounts designed to stay invisible. And I know exactly how much documentation it takes to prove it. I closed the app. I did not call my sister. I did not call my father. I lay back down in the pull-out chair, closed my eyes, and started making a list in my head of everything I was going to need. Let me back up. I am 31 years old. I grew up in a mid-sized city in Ohio, the older of 2 daughters. My mother is the kind of woman who remembers every birthday and still sends actual cards through the mail. My father is the kind of man who has strong opinions and a weak backbone, which is a specific combination that has caused our family a specific kind of trouble for as long as I can remember. My sister is 28. Her name is not important for this story. I will just call her my sister, because that is the only role she plays here. And increasingly, I'm not sure she deserves even that. Growing up, she was the one who got away with things. Not because she was charming, she wasn't, particularly, but because she was loud, and my father found conflict exhausting, and it was always easier to smooth things over than to hold her accountable. I watched that dynamic play out for 20 years. I thought I had made peace with it. I left Ohio for Chicago at 22, for a graduate program in accounting. I was good at it, the kind of good that gets you noticed, then promoted, then handed the cases no one else wants because everyone knows you'll actually solve them. By 29, I had a salary I was proud of, a condo I loved, and an investment portfolio I had built from scratch, index funds, a few individual positions, a REIT I'd done serious research on, 6,400 yuan. I tracked it every Sunday morning with my coffee. It was proof that the years of work had meant something. I was not rich. That money represented 8 years of discipline and delayed gratification and saying no to things I wanted because I was building towards something. I did not have a trust fund. I did not inherit it. I built it, dollar by dollar, the way people who don't have a safety net learn to build things carefully, and with both hands. In September of last year, my mother had a stroke. It was not catastrophic, but it was serious, and the recovery was going to be long and complicated. And she was in Portland, because that was where she'd moved after my parents divorced. And my father had remarried, and was not particularly interested in upending his life. And my sister said she couldn't take time off work. So I went. I told my firm I needed a leave of absence. They were decent about it. I sublet my condo. I packed a bag for what I thought would be 6 weeks and ended up staying 6 months. Because that is what happens when the person who is supposed to get better doesn't get better on schedule. And because I was not willing to leave her in a facility alone. Before I left Chicago, I made one mistake. I told my sister where I kept my financial documents. It was practical, or so I thought. She was my emergency contact. If something happened to me, someone needed to be able to access information. I told her the brokerage name. I told her the account existed. I did not tell her the login. I did not give her any authorization. I did not even think about it again after that conversation. I did not think about it, because it did not occur to me that my sister would spend those 6 months researching how to access a brokerage account without authorization. It did not occur to me that she would figure out the security questions, our mother's maiden name, the street we grew up on, because I had been lazy and sentimental when I set them up years earlier. It did not occur to me that she would do this slowly and methodically over 4 months in amounts designed not to trigger alerts, because I had not considered the possibility that my sister was capable of that level of premeditation. I was wrong about all of it. By the time I found that notification at 2:47 inches the morning, $618,186 was gone. I stayed in Portland for 3 more weeks after that night. My mother's physical therapist cleared her for discharge on a Thursday, and I drove her home, got her settled, stocked her refrigerator, set up her medication reminders, hugged her for a long time in her kitchen, and did not tell her any of what I had found. She had been through enough. There would be time. I drove to the airport with a spreadsheet already drafted on my laptop and a very clear sense of what I was walking back into. My sister did not meet me at baggage claim. My father did not call to ask how the drive had gone. There was a text from my sister that said, simply, "Hope the trip back was okay." As if 6 months were a vacation. As if what I was flying home toward was not a financial catastrophe she had engineered while I was caring for our mother. I did not respond. The first thing I did when I got back to Chicago was contact my brokerage's fraud department. I had the transaction records, the IP logs I'd formally requested, and a clear paper trail showing that every transfer had originated from a device registered to an address in Columbus, Ohio, my sister's apartment. The woman I spoke to at the fraud department was professional and efficient, and did not seem particularly surprised, which told me something about how often this happens. She walked me through the process. I asked specific questions. I took notes. Then I called a securities attorney, whose name I had gotten from a colleague, who handled white-collar cases. The attorney's name was Catherine. She had 20 years of experience, and a way of listening that made you feel like the situation, however bad, was also solvable. I liked her immediately. I laid out everything I had in about 40 minutes. She asked 3 follow-up questions, then told me what we were looking at. Unauthorized access to a financial account. Wire fraud. Potentially structuring the deliberate patterning of transactions to avoid reporting thresholds. Each charge carried federal weight. Catherine said she'd seen people go to prison for significantly less. I authorized her to file. Then I called my father. I want to be accurate about what that conversation was, because it matters. I called him, explained what I had found, explained the documentation I had, explained that I had already spoken to an attorney, and the fraud department had already confirmed the unauthorized access. I gave him all of that information calmly and clearly. And my father, after a pause that lasted just long enough to tell me he already knew, said, "Maya, your sister has been going through a hard time." I asked him what that meant. He said she had gotten involved in some investment opportunity. He was vague about what kind, which told me he knew exactly what kind, and she'd lost a significant amount of her own money, and she panicked and she'd made a bad decision. He said the word decision, the way people say it when they mean crime but don't want to use that word because it makes it too real. He said he was sure she would pay it back. He said the family didn't need to involve attorneys. I said, "Dad, she took $618,000. He said, "I know it looks bad." I said, "I need you to understand that this is already in motion. I'm not calling to ask permission." He did not say anything for a moment. Then he said he hoped I would think about what this would do to the family. I told him I had thought about it. I told him I had thought about very little else for 3 weeks. And then I said goodbye and ended the call. My sister called me 4 minutes later. I let it go to voicemail. She left one. I still have it. In it, she sounds, not sorry, not really, but scared, which is a different thing. She says she was going to pay it back. She says she knew I had savings, and she knew I was careful, and she just needed a bridge because the investment was supposed to return in 60 days, and then she was going to put it all back before I even noticed. She says before I even noticed, like that phrase does not reveal exactly how she thought about me. Like I was someone to be managed. Like my money was a resource she was borrowing. Not something I had built over 8 years while she was doing whatever it was she was doing. She also said, and this is the part I keep coming back to, she said, "You were always the one who had everything figured out." It didn't seem fair. I listened to that voicemail once. I saved it as evidence and did not listen to it again. Here is what my sister had done with $618,186. She had put $340,000 into a multi-level marketing scheme that marketed itself as a wealth-building community and had no actual product. The structure was textbook pyramid. Early participants made money. Everyone else lost it. And by the time she got in, the window had already closed. She lost the full amount within 3 months. She spent another $180,000 on what she described to my father as overhead and apartment upgrade, a car lease, a trip to Scottsdale with friends, several purchases I found in the records that I'm going to describe simply as unnecessary. The remaining $98,000 was still in the account she'd transferred it to. Untouched. I don't know why she hadn't spent it. Maybe she was starting to understand what she had done. Maybe she was saving it for something else. It didn't matter. That account was frozen within 48 hours of my attorney filing. The investigation moved faster than I expected. The IP records were clean. The pattern of transactions was textbook structuring. My sister had used my security questions to reset the password and had not covered her digital trail in any meaningful way because, I think, she genuinely did not expect me to look. She thought I would come home exhausted from 6 months of caregiving and not notice, or notice and not pursue it, or pursue it and back down when my father asked me to think about the family. She miscalculated on all 3 counts. 6 weeks after I filed, my sister was charged. The federal charges included wire fraud and unauthorized computer access. The structuring charge was added later. My father called me the night she was charged. He did not ask how I was doing. He said, "Do you have any idea what you've done to this family?" He said it the way people say things when they've been rehearsing them, when the emotion is real but the delivery is performed. I recognized it because I had grown up watching him use that tone to end arguments he didn't want to have. I said, "She did this to the family. I just documented it." He said I was cold. He said my mother would be devastated. I told him my mother already knew I had told her the week before, sitting in her kitchen in Portland over tea, and she had held my hand and said she was sorry and she had not once asked me to let it go. My father did not know what to do with that information. He went quiet, and then he said something I'm not going to repeat, and I ended the call. I did not hear from him again for 2 months. The $98,000 in the frozen account was recovered in full within 60 days. The remaining $520,000 was the subject of a civil suit I filed simultaneously with the fraud case. Through the civil process, my attorney was able to pursue recovery through the seizure of assets my sister had purchased during the period of the theft, the car, certain personal property, and a partial claim against a joint account she held with someone else that contained funds we could trace back to the original transfers. The MLM money was gone. That portion of the recovery was going to take longer and might never be complete. Catherine was honest with me about that from the beginning, and I appreciated it. She said the goal was maximum recovery through every available channel, and she meant it. But here's the thing about money that gets stolen. The practical reality that I had to sit with during those months, while the legal process moved along. Some of it you get back, and some of it you don't. And the part you don't get back you have to find a way to release, or it will follow you everywhere. I had built $618,000. Some of that was gone. I was going to spend the next few years rebuilding. I was 31. I had the skills and the salary and the discipline that built it the first time. It was going to be okay. Different, and harder, and unfair, but okay. What I was not going to do was pretend it hadn't happened. What I was not going to do was protect someone who had looked at 6 months of my sacrifice and decided it was an opportunity. There was a moment I should tell you about this, because it was the moment everything clarified for me. About 3 weeks after I came back to Chicago, before the charges were filed, I went to a dinner. A birthday dinner for a cousin I'm close to, held at a restaurant downtown. I almost didn't go. I was tired, and the situation with my sister was consuming, and I had been at my desk until 9 o'clock that night, reviewing documents. I went because my cousin had been one of the only people in my extended family who had called to check on me during the 6 months in Portland. She called every 2 weeks, asked real questions, sent my mother a card. That kind of consistency is rare, and I don't take it for granted. My sister was there. I didn't know she was going to be there. I walked in and saw her across the restaurant and felt something I can only describe as a kind of cold clarity, the way the air feels different right before a storm. She saw me at the same moment. She did not leave. She stood there, holding a glass of wine in a dress that I happened to know cost more than my monthly grocery budget, and she looked at me with an expression that I'm still not sure how to categorize. Not guilt, exactly. Something more complicated than guilt. I went to my seat. I said hello to the family members I was close to. I had a glass of water and ate my appetizer and talked to my cousin about her work, and for about 40 minutes I was just a person at a birthday dinner. Then my sister came and sat down next to me. She said, "Can we talk?" I said, "Not here." She said, "I know you're angry. I just want you to understand what I was going through." I said, "I understand exactly what you were going through. I have the documentation." She said, "You don't have to make this into something legal. We can handle this in the family." And something about that phrase, "handle this in the family," something about the ease with which she said it, the assumption underneath it, the idea that what she had done to me was a family matter to be handled, that my account and my years of work and my 6 months of sleeping in a hospital chair were all variables in a family equation. She got to set the terms of something about that unlocked a very specific, very calm version of me that I had not met before. I looked at her and I said, "It's already legal. It's been legal for 3 weeks. The fraud department confirmed the access. The attorney has filed. The accounts are flagged. I'm not telling you this to hurt you. I'm telling you so you can call a lawyer tonight." She stared at me. I said, "You should eat something. It's a long drive back to Columbus." Then I turned back to my cousin, who had heard most of that, and was looking at me with an expression I can only describe as terrified respect, and I asked her to tell me more about the renovation she was doing on her back porch. My sister left the restaurant 20 minutes later. She did not say goodbye. I finished dinner. I had dessert. I drove home, sat down at my kitchen table, and cried for about an hour, not because I regretted anything, but because grief doesn't care about being justified. I was grieving the version of my sister I had wanted her to be. I was grieving the family I had tried to believe in, and that is allowed. You are allowed to grieve things that were taken from you, even when you made the right choices about what came after. My father reached out eventually, not to apologize, or not exactly. He sent an email that used the word unfortunate 4 times and did not once contain the phrase I was wrong or I'm sorry for what I said. He said he hoped we could move past this. He said family was important. He said he wanted to see me at the holidays. I did not respond to that email for 6 weeks. When I did, I was brief. I said I needed time, and I would reach out when I was ready. I have not yet been ready. I'm not sure when I will be. That is something I am still working out, and I am trying to do it honestly, without rushing toward a resolution I don't actually feel yet. My mother called me on a Tuesday evening about 4 months after everything came out. She called just to talk, the way she does about her physical therapy progress, about a book she was reading, about the neighbor's dog she had befriended on her daily walks. We talked for an hour. At the end of the call, she said, I want you to know I'm proud of you, not for any of the specific things. Just for the kind of person you are. I did not know what to do with that. I said thank you. I meant it. The civil recovery is ongoing. The criminal case is moving through the system the way federal cases do, slowly, thoroughly, without drama. My attorney says to be patient. I am trying to be patient. I rebuilt my budget. I restructured my savings contributions. I am doing what I know how to do, which is look at the numbers clearly, build a plan, and execute it. That part is not complicated. It is work, and I am good at work. What is more complicated is the part that has nothing to do with money. I have spent a lot of time since this happened, thinking about the shape of my family, not the people in it, but the structure itself, the way it was built, the load-bearing walls and the weak points. I think about my father, who spent my entire childhood choosing peace over accountability, and how that choice accumulated into my sister's belief that she could do something like this, and the family would absorb it. I think about the way I was trained, from a young age, to be the one who managed and sacrificed and figured things out, while my sister was managed and accommodated and let off the hook. I think about how that dynamic was not a coincidence but a pattern, and how patterns teach people who they are allowed to be. I do not say this to excuse what she did. There is no excuse. I say it because I think understanding the full picture matters, and because the alternative, treating this as an isolated incident, a random act of greed, misses something important about how these things actually happen. I used to define myself by my relationship to this family. The responsible one, the one who had it together, the one who showed up. That identity was real, but it was also a cage, because it meant I was always the one who absorbed things, and the people around me came to expect that I would keep absorbing. I am not doing that anymore. I still show up. I showed up for my mother for 6 months, without hesitation, and I would do it again. But I am more careful now about the difference between showing up because I choose to, and absorbing things because it's expected of me. That distinction matters. I am learning to protect it. My account is being rebuilt. My legal case is moving forward. My mother is walking 2 miles a day, and has befriended 3 people at her book club, and texts me pictures of her neighbor's dog, approximately twice a week. And I am still here. Still working. Still building. My sister had a theory about me that I had everything figured out, and that this made my good fortune somehow less legitimate than her need. She was wrong about that, on every count. I did not have everything figured out. I had a plan and the discipline to work it, which is different, and which was available to her too if she had wanted it. What she took from me was real, and it mattered, and some of it I won't get back. But she did not take the thing she was actually trying to take, the sense that I am someone who builds things, who can be counted on, who shows up even when it costs something. That is not in an account anywhere. She could not access it no matter how many security questions she answered. I know exactly what I am, and I built that too.